Blue. I don't know if we have anybody actually on. 1 second.
Hey,
Hey, Jack.
yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. What's up?
Cool. Not
How's it going?
much. All right. How's the light?
Oh, that's pretty good.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, no, this is good because again, my place is kind of a mess, but it's at
Right.
my computer's actually at like the perfect spot because
Yeah.
you can see all my cool stuff right there, and you can't see my mess.
Gotcha.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
I would be
Right.
on my phone, but also
Yep. Makes sense. We are live, by the way.
okay. Oh, hi everybody. Sorry,
I don't know if
we're new to
well,
this.
according to the live chat, we have Amy, my wife, joining us
Hey,
so
Amy.
far. I do not know if there's
Yeah.
more people. It's not showing me.
I know. So Tara Oaks, she messaged our Facebook
I saw that.
page. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and I told her we were running a little bit late, so hopefully she can
Cool.
get back in time. I told her,
Yeah.
we will. For anybody listening, oh hi Amy, you already know this, but we will be uploading this later on. So if you
Yeah.
miss it,
This.
you will be able to watch it.
Yeah. The stream will be live. It'll be still on YouTube. I actually just got a notification that we went live. So anybody who might have been watching or got notifications set up, um, should be might be popping in.
Mhm.
Of course, it's posted around social media and everything else.
Right. I did too. Well, I did for Facebook at least.
Yeah.
I've been so busy. I think we've both been so busy today running around trying to
Yeah.
do stuff.
Exactly. Yep. We're definitely a work in progress here.
Mm.
We're figuring things out. Um, let me see if I can. So one thing I want to do, I'm going to share the slideshow because that we can show our awards, but then also I might be kind of finishing them up also. Is it this one or this one? It's this one. So let's see if this works.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, that's correct, but let's see if we can. There we go. And I think I really wanted to do it. There's a design tab here. Let's do this. I think I can swap it. There we go. What I found is with we're using Restream, and I think I need to do like more research into the just tweaking the layout and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Let me actually try it with this really quick and see how this works. Stop that. Try this. Switch this. Do here. And if anybody is watching, we appreciate your patience and bearing with us. There we go. Here's a little bit better one. Like here's an example. Like I've got the our insignia up here in the corner. I can customize that. I can change it. I can't move it. I can put it left or right. I can't move it around. And I can't resize these boxes. I think there's ways to do all these things. Actually, you know what? Well, yeah, that works. There we go. We'll fill the screen.
Cool.
Naturally, I also cannot get my microphone to work, so I'm just hopefully I sound okay.
Yeah. How do I sound?
You sound
This,
fine.
this is
Sound
the
good.
first time I'm using my laptop mic and camera, so
Gotcha. Yeah. Maybe
and
Amy can let us know.
I'm not using the big boy.
Right. Yeah. Same here. Yeah. I'm just using my laptop mic. Not ideal, but
Right.
we'll improve this stuff later. Um, Strange thing is I'm in 720p, and I'm guessing you probably are too. Uh,
I don't know. Is there a way
but
to check?
it's set. It tells me to. It shows mine in the corner of my
Mm-hmm.
video. Um,
No,
I don't know if it'll show you yours.
not offhand. Oh, no.
You know, I'm gonna take that
I mean,
logo
I'm
out.
looking like in the main.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually also don't know why that layout's actually not working right on that. So let me just see if. No, we don't want that either. All right. Well, this seems to be the
I like
best.
that.
That fits the
I like that a
whole
lot.
slide in the screen.
Right.
Let me see really quick if I can do this. All right.
Let me put my phone in silent.
Cool.
I was ordered groceries today, so I wanted to make sure I heard my phone when they came.
For sure. Very important.
Otherwise,
For people.
I always have my volume off.
Yeah. Same here. Um, and let's see if I can do this. This might not be perfect, but eh, sort of. I'm updating a graphic here. Is that showing up actually? No, it's not. Not until I save it. Um, yeah, basically, yeah, I have the award graphic, which on these other screens. I was going to put it there on the home screen, but the trophy we have that you put together real quick doesn't have the headphones. So I think
Right.
it'll
I
line up.
wasn't sure if we should have done the headphone version or the original version, so I
I
just
think
the
I'd
original.
probably do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd probably do the headphones. Was
Which
fine.
still reminds
Yeah,
me, since I'm working on my actual real rescue, I'd still need to fabricate his headphones.
yeah, I had the actual droid. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I keep forgetting to. Matter of fact, while we're setting up.
Yeah.
Never mind. He's in he's in the other room.
Okay.
He's in my art room. Well, the one I've commandeered from the apartment.
Right. Right. Yeah. Um. So let me do one more thing here, and then we're gonna get started in just a second. I was gonna talk a little bit about. So definitely, welcome anybody joining. These are our first inaugural. Somebody said don't use first annual because you might never do them again, but we will obviously. But call it inaugural, your first ones, to to recognize some of the disability rep that we've been seeing over the past year and a half. We started basically. Our idea was to do this every May 4th, but since it's the first one, I went ahead and extended it back to the whole of last year and up to May 4th this year, just to have a lot of good content that we've been wanting to touch on. Um, a lot of good stories and stuff like that. Uh, Let me see if I can do this really quick. I'm tweaking a couple more of these graphics really quick before we start on the list. Did want to provide a little bit more context too on the name and stuff. If anybody's not familiar with us or joining us for the first time, we're Resilient Squadron, and we uh, post and talk about disability stories in Star Wars, both representation in the franchise, in the media, among creators, cast and crew, uh, and in the fandom in the community, cosplayers, fans, stories. We basically touch on all that stuff, and we have a podcast that's kind of a periodic, as we're able to, release schedule. I think our last one we put out was middle of last year, and we're working now on some more that we're going to record, including things like this, where we're going to do a live stream, and then we'll convert this to audio also to put out as a podcast episode. So hopefully that'll help us create more content. We definitely, both being disabled, struggle with release schedules and time frames, which is just the nature of the beast. So it's just like what we deal with, and that's fine. Um, I was going to mention also, just from a naming standpoint, you know, we go by Resilient Squadron, and uh, it's kind of off the cuff naming, but we call these the Rezzy Awards for two reasons. And I know Jack, you brought this up too, and I'm open to adjusting it, changing it next year, whatever we want to do. Rezzy, when I thought of it, had kind of, it was two meanings, but also had a third bonus, which was Rezzy, basically Resilience Awards,
Mhm.
short, Rezzy being short for that. But also our mascot, as we were just talking about, that our trophy, that our award is based on, is called Rescue, RESQ, which is a droid based on Dio, who's sort of our a mascot. He's a rescue droid who has a number of functional issues that he works with, and so we so it's sort of rescue resilience. It's all kind of Resi. I think you mentioned possibly doing rescue words, which I think I'm open to it, but I like the fact that Resi kind of works with both words.
Right.
Um, and then the bonus thing is that it sounds like Razzie Awards, like the Raspberry Awards. uh, just kind of a play on that also. Um, Look at this last thing here, real quick. Uh, so that's what we based our little award on. Um, Let me resize this. And then one more I need. The other important thing too is definitely that this is definitely not a comprehensive list. Um, we want to share these things that we found that we're interested in, that we wanted to mention and bring up. But there's so many stories out there. There's almost like no way to cover them all, to touch on them all. And what we really appreciate is when people have additional suggestions, things we missed, things we weren't aware of, their own stories they'd love to share. Like we want to hear all that stuff. And So definitely, share those things with us, whether it's even here in chat while we're live, or even, we'll even point them out, but also after the fact. And of course, over the next year, if we want to keep doing this, which we expect to, we're going to be watching all next year for more great stories. That's also another thing we'll probably mention at the end also, but throw out there the fact that we now have a Discord. Besides various social media, we're on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Facebook, um, YouTube, obviously, and the uh, the Discord we just started, um, back during celebration, to kind of talk about that as it was going on, and that's another great place where we're actually going to have some of these like conversations and chatting. And people can throw out stories. We have a news feed where people can add stories they've come across, just stories in Star Wars, stories in the fandom, cosplayers, like all kinds of cool stuff, um, that we expect to cover in there and talk about. This could be a cool platform for doing all that. Um, see the Okay, there we go. Chat. Okay. Do you have any other thoughts? Oh, I know what I was going to say also. Talking really also about names really quick because it also applies to the resilience awards and our name. I've kind of wanted to write something about this for a while, but why we use resilience. Honestly, partly was we just like the name, the sound of it, but because we went around about a lot of names. This is about 5 years ago when we started or more, and but we chose resilience, which is kind of a touchy term in the disability community because it implies that it's like if you're strong enough and push through and you have willpower, you can do these things regardless of disability or overcoming your disability, which are all kind of like negative
Right, and it's much
disability
better
terms.
way to say inspiration because we all hate the.
Yeah, right.
It's much more positive way to incorporate inspiration, but also way more. Um, mm, it's so much more than
Yeah,
just
yeah.
to get away from that word, but
And
kind of
part of
on the
right, and part of my thinking with it too is almost kind of like we're taking a pretty kind of a unique perspective on it of that use of this word, which is that it's great when people have resilience on their own and have that kind of ability and willpower, but it's almost always up to factors outside their control with their disabilities and with society and all these other things. But we do see resilience as something that we can do together. And we're like, together as a community, we're resilient. We support each other, we pick each other up. Um, and that's part of what we want to do here. We want to help people to be more resilient together. And if it's somebody by themselves, you say you should be more resilient. Like it's not really very respectful of their needs and challenges. But together, if we talk about as a community, sharing cool stories, helping people out, I do see that as a valid use of resilience, and that's kind of what we stand for. Um, cool. All right. So yeah, any other thoughts you had? I'll get started with the list. Um, and funny enough, as we're chatting, I might be finishing up a couple of slides at the end still. Um,
That's it.
so I might still be following up and finishing up a few slides at the
Okay.
end of this list while we're talking. uh, let me see one thing really quick here.
And
I'm
also
actually gonna.
just happy May the 4th, everybody.
Oh yeah, I didn't even mention that. I am switching to a different microphone. Does that sound any different to you?
Yeah, a little
Any
bit.
better or worse?
Amy.
Yeah, Amy's messaging me too.
Yeah.
Um, okay, yeah, let me see. By the way, do we have anybody? I'm seeing many other people on, but that's fine. Yeah, this is very much like a first thing, first time doing this. We've done live streams before. Um, and we know we're growing. We don't have a big YouTube audience, clearly, but also, across various social media, we try to invite people on. But a lot of this is going to be also just we're going to be sharing this content in other formats and sharing this video out there too. And yeah, so it's like, if we get one or two people watching, cool. If not, whatever we get, we're going to keep sharing these stories everywhere else. And the video will be available after. Okay, so yeah, we started. So the first category is gaming. And this is a good example of the various variety of things that we talk about and cover. And our first winner is Outlaws for best game. Some of these categories are very broad, some are more specific. In gaming, this covers kind of two big areas. One is definitely with gaming, the big one, and what Outlaws has really gotten recognized for is accessibility. Outlaws just basically had, from everything I understand, just outstanding accessibility. Um, like with pretty much any game or any effort, there's room for improvement. There have been a lot of There's been a lot of content put out, a lot of accessibility experts, which we are not. We're fairly knowledgeable about it, and we use accessibility features to a degree. But uh, Ubisoft and Massive Entertainment did a great job, from what I saw, of not just having really solid accessibility features and some really unique ideas, but also they really publicized it and brought in the community. I saw a lot of accessibility previews. They flew people in to go, to check out the game during a press preview with accessibility advocates and testers. Um, so there's a lot of stories coming out, a lot of videos. There's a lot of stuff out there about it, including some of our favorite people that we follow, who've talked about this stuff and how their own experiences and just some of their insights into accessibility features in it. Um, like I said, there's always room for improvement. There's a few critiques out there too of things, but that's definitely going to come with almost any game of this, especially of this complexity. The other thing I was going to say was that I understand that when it first released, there were some more issues and challenges people had. I know you started playing it a little bit, Jack. I haven't gotten through it much, but so some of the difficulty with the stealth mode and stuff like that made it not just difficult to play, but also for some people additional extra hard to get around some of
Right.
these stealth features. But they did release an update, and I think have continued to update it since then, especially loosening up how that works to make it a lot more playable. So I think my understanding is that's improved a lot of that. That was an initial challenge. Um,
I played it when it first came out.
yeah,
I have not played since that particular update, but yes, the
yeah,
excuse me.
mhm,
But yeah, overall, the accessibility features in the game are so comprehensive. I mean, there you can tweak every little detail. And it's definitely one of the best accessibility friendly games that I've played. Now, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot more out there, but in terms of games that
yeah,
I've played, it's absolutely one of the best. I did have a little bit of trouble with the stealth, but I think it's more so just me getting used to it. And
yeah,
I'm not the greatest gamer in the world either. So, but about what that's one thing I loved about it. It's like I love stealth. Like even like when we played GoldenEye in college, I would
right,
like I would clear every level. It would may take me like a half hour, but I would do it completely stealthy.
yeah,
So even like Halo, I did
right,
so yeah. So I definitely at some point I'm glad you mentioned it because I totally forgotten about it. I do want to go ahead and go ahead and install that patch and update it and
yeah,
go ahead and try it out, see it, how how it's improved or how it's
yeah.
doing.
I'll actually just threw in a graphic in here. Whoops, it hasn't updated yet. Let's see if that updates. I think I need to move these. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead here by accident because I added a slide. Spoilers. When does this update? Now? No. Maybe once I'm sharing, maybe it doesn't update. Maybe I'm gonna have to stop and restart this slideshow. But anyways, I was going to share. Let me actually do this. Where did it go? There we go. I could do this. So just an example, just bring up some screenshots people have shared of all the various accessibility options, really widespread areas
Yeah.
of being able to customize things.
And each one of those the lists are just like, so long. It's not
Yeah.
like these aren't the five little accessibility. I mean, when you
Right.
click on it, I mean, it's like I said, it's a massive, extensive list. Like there's so many things you can do.
Yeah, and I recall too, I'll actually, show another example. This is an actual blog post that, Ubisoft put out, at the time I believe at the time the game was announced, like, when the reveal trailer came out, they already had this accessibility features list available. It was either then or soon after, and, I mean, this list just goes on and on. Am I
Yes,
sharing it right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's almost overwhelming. It isn't, but it anymore, and it could be slightly overwhelming
Right.
just
I mean,
because
yeah.
again, it like
Well,
when we say
ironically
it's large, but that's a wonderful thing though. I'd
yeah,
much
it's
rather
great.
have a
Yeah,
bunch of features that you
the
know
more the
I
better.
can change rather than sit there and have a trouble with the game because oh they didn't include this, they didn't include that, which myself or
Yeah.
you or anybody in the community may need help with.
Yeah, exactly.
And it shows that they actually took the time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, exactly. And Ubisoft has amazing, accessibility experts there,
Mhm.
really dedicated. They're making a massive effort, no pun intended, um, like a couple of the major companies to really incorporate accessibility into their whole process and practices and development. Um, and so, yeah, this is just it's cool stuff. Always room for improvement, but um, yeah, it's good to see. Um, and let's see here. Let me switch back to actually. Did it update the slide? No, it didn't. Okay. Oh, I know what I want. I did want to share kind of all additional perspective on the game. In terms of representation, it's a little more loose. And again, we haven't played through it, so there may be more things in the game that we haven't heard about or seen. But a couple things that stood out to me about it. One was that the droid ND5, um, a few people I saw kind of picked up on feeling like he was sort of autistically coded, neurodivergent. There is a issue there or difficulty because that is kind of an unfortunate trope of uh, droids and disability representation, where comparing neurodivergent people to robots, or saying that because this droid is programmed the way it is and it doesn't have certain understanding of things, or limited programming, that's equivalent to being like autistic or neurodivergent. And that's kind of overused and over um, a lot of people kind of tend to focus on that without when they don't have a full understanding of neurodivergence and autism. But I did see that some people, there was a great article, and I had the name here. um, I will actually find it because I want to credit them. But yeah, Jesse Lennox from Digital Trends wrote that this small Star Wars Outlaws moment gets autism representation right. And so he talked about the same things about the tropes, the positive and negatives of that, about that, and that he kind of explores that, but he does deal with this one line where Indy 5 says, like, I don't need help with something that he's having trouble with. I'm not broken. It's just the way I am. And he that really kind of resonated with him. Um, that basically it's just that is, he doesn't need fixing. He's just different. It's just how he is. And I'll definitely share that article when I post all this elsewhere, because that was really insightful, and I saw lot of similar things out there too. I guess the other important part of that too, like I said, there's a it's a common kind of trope that's looked down on as far as comparing autistic people to droids and things like that. But on the flip side, it is very valid when people do see themselves in certain characters, including droids, including different aliens and things. Maybe they are set up and created a certain way due to their species or their programming or whatever it is. When people do find connections with those things because of their neurodivergence or any other disability or anything else like that, that's all completely valid, you know?
Right.
We get
I also
out
want to
of
bring
things
up,
what we get out of them.
remember, in Rise of Skywalker with
Yes,
Dio, that I
exactly.
don't know if it was the parent. I think the parent of an autistic child was saying that their child, when they took their child to see the movie, like, "Mommy, Dio's like me," or something to that
Yeah.
effect. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but again, that's very, very cool. Like I said,
Mhm.
there is a trope, but then when you have somebody that, like you said, "Oh my god, I can relate this droid, this
I
character."
mean,
It just like me. That's cool. I mean, like everybody's viewpoint is absolutely 100% valid. I
yeah,
mean,
right,
if you
exactly.
just see the tropes and it bothers you, that's cool. But I mean, if you can see a character that may be a droid, is like, and you can relate to it, that's awesome too. It's all
Yep.
a certain point of view. That's all what Star Wars is. Certain point of
Right,
view.
it is from a different
Yeah.
point of view,
Yeah.
exactly. It's actually funny, it reminds me of um our first guest was, had a blog from an autistic point of view.
Mhm.
There's a play on those words also, but I'm also glad you mentioned Dio too, because, like I didn't mention at the beginning, like why we chose our droid rescue, RESQ, is basically based on Dio, because I think he resonated additionally to kind of both of us in a sense, because he just had these traits that were recognizable, and we probably projected on him a bit, but also it's just some, when creators are creating things, they infuse them with their ideas also, and sometimes their own traits and things like that that they come up with. I think there's certainly an element with Dio of, um, definitely people picked up on that kind of neurodivergent kind of autistic traits that he has of interaction, which is partly programming, but also even within the story, it's trauma. Like, he is a traumatized droid. I think that's what we both really latched onto,
Right.
in addition to kind of some of his physical different issues and quirks. We kinda play that up with our mascot, Rescue, because we do call him he's a rescue droid that we found, our in the lore of Resilient Squadron, we found him and repaired him. Uh, you can actually see in the graphic, we based him on a particular Hasbro version of the toy that has the extra wheel in the front, and kind of a,
There's a wheel in the front
or
and the back.
the tr yeah, front and back, kind of a
Yep.
training wheel, but we consider that that's something our version of him needs to, to work properly, because, his, um,
I always say
s
his balance motivator
yeah, his balance and
was
his stability
broken,
isn't good.
and
Yeah,
so on assembly line, he came off the assembly line broken, so they just
right.
pitched him. We found him and repaired
Yeah,
him
he was
to these little
discarded
training
for not working
wheels.
right.
Yeah,
Mhm,
but yeah, so they
and
just
as
happened to work out that they had like that particular model of the toy had the training wheels. Like, hey, you know what?
yeah, and that clicked up
It's an
with us
awesome
as
droid
a
because
feature.
Dio is so
Accessibility.
awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
especially with his backstory, but now he's also has these wheels,
yep,
and that further gives him a much deeper story and fits within
yeah,
Brazilian Squadron.
yep, and
Mhm.
our full version you'll see on our website and other places, of the Dio I'm sorry, of the rescue and our logo, also has headphones, which, is kind of how that came about. Was kind of funny because it's intended as, it was what we added just when we started doing our podcast. Like, here's our version of Rescue that has the has headphones on, but then also later realized that's also a bit kind of a neurodivergent, trait. Like, it's maybe that's something he needs
Right.
actually for to cover up his like sound dampeners for
Mhm.
he doesn't get sensory overwhelmed because that those features don't quite work the same as
Right.
the other
And
droids and other
Dio probably
models.
would have. He could have benefited from them or some kind of mechanism.
Maybe that's what he needed, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe more comfortable around everybody.
Right.
I thought I had that graphic and I don't see it. That's fine. Um, yeah. Okay. So let's see here. Oh, here he is. Here, I'm going to share this graphic really quick, just because we're talking about it. What I really need to do, as usual, is close a bunch of tabs and windows.
See, I hate that. Like, I have to have everything like easily accessible. I can't when I have too
Yeah.
many tabs. It overwhelms me.
Yeah, it does me too. I just haven't been taking the time to clean up while we're doing this.
Like even
Um,
my email uh, accounts are just so clean because I hate it when I have like a million of them and I can't find the one. So
yeah,
I'm always cleaning and only keeping the emails that I need.
right. Yeah, here we go. There's our
Yeah.
there's our actual logo with the rescue with his headphones and his mobility aids. Um, but yeah, same idea with Indy 5, same idea with Dio. These are all things where we do project onto them, and I'm bet that I think it was mentioned probably in some of the behind the scenes when we talked about Dio and his creation and interactions that I mean they had the sense that he had been through trauma and that they wanted to represent him in that way. And there are probably things in society and cultural, awareness that we have of certain issues and disabilities and things like that that we work into stories and characters, whether it's conscious or not, that then do end up resonating with people. So
Right. And
that's
that's what I was
definitely
gonna say too.
Indy 5 is a case of that.
Right. Because like I said, I mean I understand the trope, I do. Um and it definitely is a trope. Like to me, there's so many Star Wars droids. Like they are 100% fully fleshed characters,
Yeah.
personalities, everything. Where it's
Yeah,
like
like C3PO and ones
they
like that.
don't feel like robots to
Yeah.
me, droids. You know, what I mean, they so like to me, they're much more than just droids, just robots, just AI.
Yeah.
They are. I mean, yes, literally they still are. But to me, like
What they mean and what they
yeah,
represent
yes, you're right. They're
in the
represented
story
is
and
much much more.
yeah.
Right, right. So I get the trope, but I don't see it as much within Star Wars. Although again, I recognize it.
Yeah. I think we and it's a lot of what we try to do here is like and probably we're spending a lot of this on the first slide here because there's some other examples of this going along, but um, we try to be conscious of the tropes and negative uses of things, but then also point them out and talk about them, but recognize the nuance and look at the value and the pros and cons and recognize different people's perspectives on things. That's really a lot of what we try to do, and I think it's valuable.
And again, it goes back to what is it? A certain point of view.
Exactly. Can I switch back to here? Yeah, I can. Um, kind of, sort of tangentially along those lines. This is my pet thing. With when it comes to outlaws.
Mhm.
Uh, but I'm also kind of like somewhat passionate about it. And I don't know anyone else who has said this or feels this way, but there was a lot of talk, still a lot of talk, and it's amongst the, I would say probably the worst parts of the fandom, the criticism of Kay's looks.
Yes.
Um, and there's so many factors about it that we don't need to get into. It's the toxic part of fandom that is going to criticize things. They're misogynistic. They are just small-minded people complaining about whatever they're going to complain about. Um, I think Kay is awesome. I've like I said, I've only played so much, but she seems great. She looks cool. She looks great. Um, the one factor with her that they revealed, I'm not even sure if it's even mentioned in the game at all, but his backstory, the fact that part of her look is that her nose is broken. Um, and that's to me, that's kind of a disability representation as well. And I may be sensitive to it because I have a chronically broken nose. my my nose is a mess. I can only partially breathe out only one nostril most of the time. And so when I saw that, I was like, "That's so cool." Have a character. I mean, broken noses aren't that uncommon in any kind of action thing, but to actually have a character who that is a key part of her appearance and look, and you see it in the close-ups, her nose is crooked. Um, you know, I can kind of and I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which makes everything very flexible. The broken nose might or might not be even be a part of that, but it is part of why I am not getting it fixed because EDS makes surgery more complex and risk of complications. So we're probably just leaving it as it is. I don't even know how long it's been this way since I got diagnosed with it. But again, yeah, all these discussions about her appearance, and I'm just like, she looks just normal to me, and I do resonate with that fact that, she has a broken nose, and then that also adds to the fact that all these criticisms of her looks, uh, do click with me and kinda, like, rub me the wrong way for sure, on top of all the other obvious misogynistic crap. Um, but yeah, to me, that's why and again, like we're saying, you kinda project things onto things. You recognize and pull your own story into stories that you find and find value in them in that way. And that it means something to me. It's small, but it's significant to me. And there's a lot of things like that with disability and representation. And we'll probably get into it at some point, but even in terms of representation, like with and representation of so many different things
Mhm.
in terms of diversity and all the different parts of that. Um, there's a similar thing on the next item because for Outlaws to be our winner and our honorable or our key best game. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but our sort of I called it a questionable mention. I don't want to call it dishonorable. It's questionable because it's kind of like some pros and cons to it, which is Star Wars Hunters. And I'll talk a lot about this game. I think a lot about this game because I'm obsessed with this game and likely addicted to this game, and it's shutting down. They wrapped up the last season. They removed all the payment systems and lots of features, and it's basically just open gaming for now till turns off. They turn off the servers in October. I'm salty about it. I'm disappointed. Um, but ever since it launched just last year, the game had a kind of a troubled history. It went through but from the time it was announced, it went through some more closed testing overseas for a long time, for I think years before they finally got it to the point they were able to launch it in major markets and did actual launch of the game. Um, but at that point, it was actually a really solid game. It's a really great game. It's really fun. I feel like Star Wars fans have kind of slept on it, but I'm kind of just biased because I think it's so fun. Um, I also think part of the problems with it were the fact that they also limited it to mobile devices and the Switch. It was not on any other major gaming consoles. They started doing testing back in November, December, I think, on PC, um, and that had issues. They had to go back to the drawing board with some of that stuff, and I think and once they announced the shutdown, they just canceled the PC version too. I think they eventually would have got everywhere. So when you look at something else like Marvel Rivals and some of the other games that it was competing with in terms of like these action shooters, hero shooters, um, it just didn't take off the way that those other ones have. And
Yeah,
it's
there's
too bad.
just
I
too
think
many of them.
there's too many of them too. Yeah, and I think they had issues with marketing. They had issues with. I mean, you just didn't see it a lot other places and tie-ins and things. Um, they didn't. Um, the, a lot of the content, thankfully, everything it was a free game, free to play, and there was no pay to play in terms of functionality and advantages. or progress, it was very much all the pay features were for cosmetic stuff, which is great. But also that stuff was really expensive. Like, it was a lot to buy, like, 1 costume, and then they released a vault feature, which would sort of a mini gambling thing where you would keep paying more and more and more and more to get more of a set of items, and the actual cost of that was some people worked out as, like, to really get this entire set for this costume set for this character was, like, $80 if you spend the entire amount to get all of it. So it just kind of got a bit ridiculous. I'm sure they're scrambling to keep it alive and stuff, but yeah. Having said all that, I would say maybe part of the problem too is the game just was not very accessible in terms of accessibility features. It literally had like no settings or options for accessibility. It had the usual, a few video tweaks and audio tweaks, and volumes and stuff like that. But I think the Switch version might have had a few more, but basically there was just not much at all in the way of accessibility features, which most of these style
Who
of
was the
games do
publisher?
have. Zynga, and Zynga knows mobile games. They're successful in mobile games, obviously, um, but they've also, I believe, they've also shut them down before too when they haven't worked out. So, um, yeah, they didn't really have. I mean, even when it came out, I started looking at. We were going to write about it, and there's just there's just no accessibility features, no accessibility information, nothing on their website, nothing in their coverage. Even accessibility reviewers that we followed, nobody even looked at it or talked about it or reviewed it. I think maybe just because of this how small scale it was when it launched. So I call that a questionable mention for that reason. But then also, it did have a great piece of representation in it with the character Zaina that you see here. She's a former rebel medic. Um, she's a healer class in the game. So basically, she runs around, hits people with Bacta, has some great moves. Has these two prosthetic legs that are actually just really cool and not really commented on. They do kind of play into the animation, which is cool. That's always nice to see. It's not just like she just has legs. Um, you hear her walking, she has a little tink tink sound, and as she runs around. But she has some really cool moves, and it's just really cool that she's a sort of a active uh, hunter in the game, healer who has prosthetic legs that are just kind of cool design, and it was kind of neat to see. It's never really commented on either in the in-game stories at all or in the book tie-in. I don't even think it mentions her legs in the book tie-in. So it's just kind of a design element, but it's cool that just it's there. It doesn't give her any special abilities, really. I don't think it's not a part of any of her uh, abilities in the game, any of the her moves or anything. But yeah, I think that's cool. On the flip side, there's another character, um, Diago, who is the sharpshooter, um, who is a blind, I guess it's pronounced Miraluka, which I think is both the singular and plural of that. And we've seen a lot of Miraluka throughout Star Wars. There were a bunch in Legends. I'm drawing blanks on the names. I don't know if you remember, but
No.
there was one in Knights of the Old Republic and various others. There was also a Jedi character in um, who later became an Inquisitor, who was a Miraluka who was blind. I forget which medium I think he started in a comic. Yeah, he was in a comic and later in a Darth Vader comic as an Inquisitor who was a Miraluka. Um, One of the interesting things with the Miraluka is that they don't have eyes as a species, and they're described in Legends and some of these other characters like the Jedi as using the Force to see and to perceive around them. We've seen a lot of that in Star Wars. I mean, the best example is probably Kanan as a Jedi. Similar case, obviously, with Chirrut in Rogue One, who our understanding, I think, is that he's more sensitive and in tune with the Force and can perceive things around him, but it still gives him, amazing moves he's able to fight a whole group of stormtroopers. He's able to blast TIE fighters from a distance and sense where they are, which is the level of control that you can kind of understand in terms of suspension of disbelief in this world, in this Star Wars universe, that there is a force that people can tap into. That there's different levels of awareness, probably different midichlorian counts, um, but that there are lots of different characters and species who is a spectrum of awareness of the force and things around you and the environment around you that people like Chirrut can tap into, people like Kanan can really use because he is a Jedi. He's so in tune with it. But in the lore of the game, and in the descriptions, and in the I think even in the book, it's described that Diago just uses his hearing. It doesn't say he has any ability to use the Force. I think it's maybe there's a possibility, but it explicitly says he uses his hearing to find his targets and his enemies. And you even have like I forget what it's called, but there's a sensory move that he can do, a passive move where you can like sense everyone around you and it highlights your enemies on the map. And that does stray much more into another trope of called the it's called on TV tropes, it's the blind weapon master. And it's just kind of a general trope of blind people who get added extra other abilities. Daredevil's a great example, but also he's a little bit different in the sense that he is a superhero. He has superpowers, literally. But it's really common with any kind of character who's there's a common thing of making a character blind and then giving them kind of superhuman abilities in other ways. And it's just not how disability really works and not how blindness works or hearing. Um, there are people in real life who are able to do amazing things with echolocation. Um, there's a guy who rides a bike around it's amazing. There are real stories of those things, but in terms of suspension of disbelief, and yes, even in a world with the Force and with aliens, all this stuff, to have a character who is just blind but can see an entire map and targets, a mile away, um, is a really misrepresentation of disability, and um, it does a disservice to blind people and what the blind experience is really like. Um, this is a case where I mean, I'm speaking to my understanding experience of seeing this story and people comment on these types of stories throughout media. That also does apply, I think, to Diago. I haven't seen many people comment on him specifically in this case, but this is another case where I would love to hear more insights from blind users and gamers and fans to say, oh yeah, um, or say it's not that big a deal to me, or that it is an issue. But he definitely seems to fall into that because they explicitly talk about his hearing.
Right. But even like in A New Hope with Luke, when Obi-Wan gives him the helmet with the blast shield, he just used he gave it to him just so he could focus.
Hmm.
It he didn't suddenly become like great master Jedi like Yoda. It
He
just
was
helped.
working on it.
It was a tool to help him focus.
Hmm.
And so, but like you say, yeah, but yeah, once you get into the super power realm, yeah,
Yeah, right.
it can be a little much.
Um,
Even like
yeah,
Chirrut, I mean, like Chirrut, like, it was to me with Chirrut, it was his faith, and he was doing stuff again that was remarkable, but not. I don't think not with outside of the realm of Star Wars. Is even
right.
though he was doing some significant, some very incredible things, it was still grounded to an extent.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's true.
And that's what
Um,
that's what they definitely need to focus on. Yeah.
yeah, look, really, if they had said to me, I mean, if they said there are Force users in this game. This is a story. It's a
Mhm.
canon story, post Empire, maybe New Republic era type story. She's a former rebel. There's former Imperials in here. There is they call her the Sith character, but she's really just a Force user uh, who plays a Sithin game in the arena setting. But yeah, there are Force users in this game, in this world. They could have very just easily said he has a Chirrut level of Force awareness that Maralukans have had in the lore, in the canon. And if they had said that, it would be like, okay, yeah, that's totally understandable within our understanding of Star Wars. But yeah, when they said it's explicitly uses the super hearing that he's learned, it's not only inconsistent with the Miraluka species that we've known, but also like it then introduces and falls into this kind of trope area of overused common sort of
Right.
negative
He's
stereotypes.
he suddenly turns into Star Killer
Yeah,
in Force Unleashed,
right.
where he's pulling down Star Destroyers from outer
Yeah, yeah,
space,
right,
and
exactly. Um,
which is fun in a game, but like I said, just it totally misses the
yeah.
point.
I say all this too is like, and we use these things as lessons. We're not like, hey, oh, this is such a problem. I call this a questionable mention because the accessibility problems. Xana's great in terms of representation. Diago's not so great in terms of representation, but also like I love the game. I love playing as Diago. It's like he's awesome. But there's there part of what we want to do here and sharing some of these stories is and why we cover both the winners and the honorable mentions and the questionable mentions and then even the negatives later is that these are things to learn from, and things to talk about. It's a gateway for us to get into some of these topics and explore them. Um, okay, so next up is
Question: Are
go for
we?
it.
I'm sorry, I apologize because I don't have the script in front of me. Are we moving away from games yet? Because
Yeah,
there is something I don't know if it's on the list.
good point. Yeah,
I do
go for it.
want to kind of mention Fortnite. If Fortnite's not on your list yet,
It's not. Go for it.
okay. So no, what do you want to talk about?
Oh well, I mean,
Or
it's actually that's a good example of an
It's it's
area.
it's it's a small thing,
Mhm.
but yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Like,
I just wanna definitely wanna mention it before we move on, but again, it's wherever you wanna.
well, I'll put it this way. Like, I don't know much about Fortnite's. I've been wanting to jump in. We talked
Right.
about it. We
But
both installed it
that's
to get
kinda
into
why
it.
I wanna say it too. Yeah.
um, there are a lot of other game media that have introduced Star Wars elements, and I would definitely like to cover those and talk about them or share
Mm,
uh, insight into them from other people, from experts. My understanding of Fortnite's got some pretty great accessibility features, and I hope that with the Star
that's
Wars
what I was
elements
wondering.
added, that yeah, it's a good example of maybe like
Right.
whereas there are other games.
Or if anybody listening to this or listening to it, or later on, if you have played Fortnite
Yeah,
and can, share your experiences with their accessibility features. Also, and for anybody, the reason we're bringing up Fortnite in the first place is because very recently they started their annual Star Wars. Uh, how you want to say it? The Star
yeah, I forget what
Wars
they call it, like add-ons or, uh,
add-ons.
it's a
Yeah, so
gaming it's a,
it's like it's kind of yeah.
yeah, uh, yeah, and I think it feels like they've done more this year. There's more content, it sounds like,
Hmm.
a lot of
Right.
cool stuff people are excited about and getting into it. It's funny enough, with Hunter shutting down, I've seen a lot of people in the Hunter Discord are moving over to Fortnite with this stuff being announced, and there's like, "We're all just playing Fortnite now," playing Star Wars characters in there
And,
instead. I mean, a lot of the fun of Hunters is this the Star Wars elements, it's a shooter game, but it's also like,
mhm.
um I actually was gonna mention as far as, like, Xana, I mean, the costumes and everything else were so cool and so creative, and I would just spam Jack with so many cool, screenshots of character skins and and elements, and, a good example just with Xana, she has multiple costume lots of costumes, and it includes, like, Hoth outfits, and, like, they would adjust her prosthetics, her robotic legs, cybernetic legs to match those costumes. So they have different paint schemes, different color schemes, different types of metal. In the Hoth one, it matches her Hoth outfit, which kind of like standard rebel Hoth look. But there's like snow on her prosthetic legs, and it's just cool that they incorporate all those kind of things um, into uh, that element of her look. Um, all right. So our next big area, kind of going off on a separate tangent, is our best literary representation. Um, there's a lot of these that I'll point out that like I've put a lot of these together because there's things I've discussed with Jack probably here and there, but I know Jack, you haven't. We access different areas of media and consume. I consume the literary stuff, the books, comics, audiobooks, audio dramas voraciously. Which was one thing worth pointing out really quick in terms of accessibility of these things. Cost is a big factor, and I'm a big advocate and a big user of library systems to get to a lot of this stuff. We're going to touch on an aspect of that coming up, but yeah, that's an issue with a lot of these things, especially when there's great representation. They sometimes that means there's in a media format that people don't have access to, either for cost or even accessibility reasons. Um, but I want to mention that really quick because if I'm talking about these things a lot, it's because I've listened to all these audiobooks and read all these comics. Um, and definitely appreciate your input, Jack, on any of these that you have insight into. But I know you haven't read as much of them. Um, But, yeah, I was actually we're debating about this title here, of this award, but literary to me covers all those areas of books, audiobooks, audio dramas, and comics. So they all kind of, various things coming out of Star Wars Publishing, or I guess it's Lucasfilm Publishing that works with all these different areas. Um, this one in particular is something I don't even know if people have seen much of. It kinda came out under the radar. The first issue, the first, I guess, audiobook, audio drama last year is this Audible original called Seeds of Starlight. Kinda came out of nowhere. Um, Written by, if I'm not mistaken, is Kevin Scott. And it is a uh, audio Audible original, Audible exclusive. It's free if you have an Audible subscription. I think you can pay for it otherwise, although then, like with anything with Audible, it's expensive. I think it's
I know though, just real
mhm,
quick, I've especially maybe just because I've subscribed to Audible before, I've been getting a lot of deals lately.
yeah, right.
Like
You can get some good deals.
real like 50% off, $6 a month. I mean,
Yeah,
I've so yeah, I mean, even if you do the free, even if you, I think just like with anything, just by signing up, you're added to their mailing list. So then
start getting deals.
you're just gonna, for better or worse, you're gonna get flooded with emails from Audible
Mhm,
and with deals.
yeah,
So so yeah, I mean, there definitely are costs, but I know I regularly get deals.
yep, yeah, and, yeah, and yeah, and we'll get more into the accessibility of these things in a bit, but also, yeah, it's a good example though of like this story came out of nowhere, and it was cool because it was like, I mean, I think they literally dropped it on Audible with no announcement. It was just like, "Oh, hey, there's a book." People started finding, this short audio story. Um, I just double checked, actually, I think it's George Mann wrote these, and, um, yeah, because I had chatted with him about this, and, um, the stories center mostly around this one character, but does feature a couple of other characters who have been in other media as well. Some of these other they're all young Jedi characters or Padawans or younglings. But the key one is this Padawan, Cam Linden, who has a vocoder, and it's actually explained in the story. There's a backstory to it of him being in an accident, I think on Coruscant, like a speeder accident that damaged his throat and vocal cords and everything. So he uses a vocoder, and that's really interesting also in this setting because in this medium because um, like I had actually conversed a little bit with George Mann online about it, and he said that yeah, it was some of the thinking behind it was that this is an audio format. So in the performance of it, and they have multiple characters, you get they added some sound effect to his voice. He has a bit of a robotic sound to his voice, mechanical. Um, And there are times early in the story where he deals with that, and um, it's actually kind of one of the. I'm not going to spoil it. It's a short story, young audiences, but it is. There's a bit of him finding his voice, quote unquote voice, learning to speak more confidently to groups and to others, um, not to be less shy, but to be more comfortable in himself. Because early on, he is like, "This is my voice. I don't want to speak up for myself or share my opinion." Partly because of his the physicality of it, and so it's a really cool little bit of representation. I think it does add to it for people who can experience it. um, a uh, a nice connection between a particular medium that the story is being told in and this feature. He said that it was an audio centric disability that can be actually told through that dramatic method. Um, so I thought that was a really cool aspect. It actually does explore the disability in the story. Um, when I say he's learning to find his voice, is very important wording that we always touch on, which is that he's not overcome the disability. He learns to work with the disability and live with it. He learns acceptance, and that's a very important part of representation. Not oh, I've overcome this thing, like it's not a problem anymore, or I've achieved something, or I was resilient enough that it's not a problem anymore. Like, no, still an issue. It's still a problem. It's a challenge for him. It's just he has to learn to work with it and live with it. Um, and I mentioned it too because there was a follow up one. Seeds of Starlight was the first one last year. A second one, Haunted Starlight, came out this year, which is kind of so it was a two-part story. It was a beginning and end. That's kind of wrapped up now. I'm curious where Cam goes from here, what media he'll end up in. But the second book did not deal as much with that at all. In fact, he was even it's more of an ensemble, I would say, of characters. Some of those characters from the first one too. Um, it's less focused on him, and it also deals less with some of those issues of challenges that he's dealing with. But it's still great to have him in there. And see more of his story. It's almost interesting in a sense that the second one, it does become a passive thing. You still hear his voice in the story when you're listening, but it's not really talked about or dealt with. Um, it may be explained in terms of like just background, but um, uh, yeah. Um, but having talked about that, actually, kind of move on to some similar things. These are just sort of our runners up in this area. Did I actually? No, I'm on the wrong one. Here we go. Various runners up, and these are just some examples. I think there are a fair number of more of these. I'd love for people to suggest other ideas of like, hey, what about so and so? What about so and so? A lot of these, if you point somebody out that you've noticed or clicked with that we didn't think of, we're happy to like post them later, somewhere and share those stories. Um, I will mention a common thread, and this is like, as we all know throughout Star Wars, it's like most of these. It's actually why this list probably is not exhaustive. The missing limb thing is like so prevalent and so core to Star Wars, um, that I'm sure this is not all of the examples of people who have lost hands or lost arms, etc. It's just so common. Um, but Yeah, so I'll go through this list. The real exception to that, whoops, is here on the left, Vecna Mooncrest. This is a character just introduced by Mark Guggenheim in a new Marvel comic series, Jedi Knights. She appeared in a collage in the first issue, but in the second issue, it actually delves into a story featuring her and Yoda. Um, and he mentioned this and promoted it in panels and stuff that he really saw her as the first real disabled Jedi. That's probably subjective because I think we've had opinions on various characters that we consider disabled, or disabled kind of coded. But um, it is described in the story that she has like a congenital health issues, and that she does have these cybernetic implants that help her manage her body, and to function. So there's a number of different things that could uh, really, equate to probably like in universe equivalents of issues in our world. I could see it as, I have Ehlers-Danlos. I could see it as somebody like that who has these cybernetic things to help with her joint and muscular issues, connective tissue issues that I have, that people with EDS struggle with. I'm sure there's lots of others that people can relate to. And in this first story, in the second issue, uh, mm, mm, they don't really delve too much into her. They do. She does deal with the implants at one point, and mentions it, but that's also good in a way. Like before, it's like sometimes it's just great to have. There's a disabled character. Maybe we'll touch and explore it more later. But it does come up in the story. But we also have to dwell on it. It doesn't have to be the point of the story. It doesn't have to be the message. It doesn't have to be the story arc or character growth or any of that. It doesn't necessarily have to be related to this disability. So I would say I'm looking forward to more of her story and learning more about her. She seems pretty awesome too, just as a character. And it's a new Jedi that we've never seen before or know anything about. So hopefully we'll get to keep seeing that. Um, these next two, Kirsten Tekka and Lorna D. I should also mention here, there's all these things that might be like mild spoilers for people reading these stories who maybe just now starting them. High Republic's been going on for years. It's getting near the end. They've been through a lot of stories, but there are minor little spoilerish drops we might mention here and there. Um, and I won't even get necessarily into who all these characters are, but basically, Kirsten Tekka and Lorna D are both. Kirsten Tekka is sort of a side character in some of the smaller books, who loses his hand. There's a without getting too much detail. There's a this sort of infection going around that he acquires during one of the stories, and they have to sever his hand. And there is a kind of a sequence where they have to work with trying to figure out how to do that, um, to save him. But then in the next book, he's got like a prosthetic, a cybernetic hand, that he's learning to deal with. This character, Lorna D, is basically I'll say one of the main antagonists of the High Republic series, the first and third phases of it. Great character, and she's been featured in books and comics, and now two audio dramas. And she also, near the end of the last first phase, she lost her hand to one of the Jedi. Has a cybernetic one in the latest stories. Doesn't really touch on it at all. It is kind of more of a sort of passive thing, where like with a lot of Star Wars characters, like, okay, lost the hand, got a cybernetic one, keep going. It's not really dealt with in her story much. She also is just very, I don't think, too bothered by it. She's that kind of character who just kind of does things, and has her goals and agenda. Um, but certainly his limb difference and amputee representation, uh, they definitely fall into the category. This last one is probably quite a bit more complex. I'll try to get into all the story, but Skier is a Jedi Master in High Republic, a great character, a Trandoshan who has been through it. Very early in High Republic, he does lose an arm, and the interesting aspect of that is that he is essentially armless for much of the story. He goes through some other stuff with that arm regrowth and stuff, but basically, being a Trandoshan, he grows limbs back, being based on a lizard, and it's interesting to see that progress, that process. He doesn't get a cybernetic hand or arm. He doesn't need it, so he's kind of just going through things while that regrows, and he does go through different types of. It plays into the story a bit, um, and but also he has an additional aspect to his story that is probably what makes the character the most interesting, is that as a Trandoshan, I'm forgetting the name of it, but he has a
uh, rare condition that Trandoshans experience that affects his cognitive ability. And the side effect of that is he loses his connection with the Force. And throughout the story, I'm still reading phase 3, so I can't even say everything where this is going, but he's learning to reconnect with the Force through by getting his by addressing that disease that's specific to Trandoshans. So he has an interesting combination of different elements going on there with his. He's also has plenty of trauma throughout all this process, so he's a really interesting character, and he's featured again in the comics, in some books, and especially in the audio dramas, and you really get to see that progress, and he's really his challenges and how they actually get explored in the story a lot. Um, I can't, and I hadn't thought of any other major ones. These are sort of main characters, but kind of thing I touched on a bit ago for our next big thing here. This is more of our. I didn't want to say dishonorable mention here too much, or like loser left out. This is our winner of our award for the biggest media accessibility problem, which is not really a positive
Our
at all.
Razzie.
This is our equivalent of the Raspberry Awards, um, and this is very and we want to be we're conscious of the challenges involved in these things, but we still want to point it out because it does matter. The publishing schedules and availability of various bits of content across these lines is an issue for accessibility. I do think Lucasfilm, I think it's Random Worlds is the publisher now of a lot of these, are aware of these things, and they are doing what they can as often as they can to make sure these things line up properly or are available in other formats. But just as an example, anytime this is an inherent problem with a lot of the publishing, with a lot of media production. If something is restricted to a specific format, it's only accessible to people who can access that format. It sounds obvious, but if you have an audio drama, deaf people or even people with any kind of hearing difference or impairment will not be able to access that or may have difficulty with it. If you have something that's just in print or just an ebook format, blind users will have limitations as far as what they can access with that. There are tools like screen readers and things like that that can help. But I think in sort of in an ideal publishing world, things would always be released in multiple formats to be as accessible, to have these stories as accessible to as many people as possible. Clearly, there are.
I think what you're going to say too, sorry,
Go ahead.
is that the frequency of the being released.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one big thing you're saying is there's such a delay. They are good about it, but it just
Yeah, so that's what I was about to point out. Yeah,
by the time that certain feature is available, then
a lot of it is.
it's already been
And that's why I mentioned schedules, and this is a problem to different severities of degree based on. I think in an equitable world, everything would be accessible to everyone at the same time. Um, it's understandable that there are logistics and practical issues. There may be licensing, there may be production time frames, lots of different factors that go into these things that we don't have all the insight into. And we've seen the publishers and the editors talk about these things from time to time. I know sometimes they've talked about making more effort to make these things line up better. For most major novels, the adult novels, I think, with some of the others, you will see the book and audiobook drop at the same time. In almost every case, I think it's rare that they don't drop at the same time. And they're publicized, they're promoted, they're pre-listed on Audible, on other audio platforms, etc. Everywhere, just like they're in multiple bookstores and online retailers. But quite often, we've seen a lot of delays with like young adult books, I think, and other ones where it's like there might be a month or 2 months between a book dropping and an ebook version of it, and then audible book, or I'm sorry, audio book dropping like a month or two later. That's unfortunate in the terms of equity of being able to access those stories. Some people are left out for a while. They do eventually get access to it in those cases, which is great. On the flip side, you get things like the audio dramas. We already mentioned these Audible originals. With most audio dramas that they produce, Tempest Runner was the first one with Lorna D that focused on her, and Tempest Breaker is the most recent one. There have been other. There was a major one in Phase 2 of this High Republic that was the Battle of Jeddah, and I wrote a blog post about this where I discussed some of these issues, where there was there's time between basically I was going to say with the audio dramas they will usually often put out a script book in print or ebook format, and the problem is sometimes those come out quite a bit later after the story has come out. For side stories, like they did a Dr. Aphra story, audio drama, that was basically an adaptation of the comics of the first run of the first arc of the Aphra comics, and so it was available in other formats, but also it was a very side story in the greater arc. With something like High Republic, where everything's very tied together and there's very, it's a series of events that take place. That Battle of Jeddah was a key moment in that whole story arc, where key events took place that affect the upcoming stories. It's like people who don't have access to that one, and it's actually the same thing now with these Tempest stories with Lorna D. These are key things that happen that affect, that resonate throughout the next books and comics, etc.
Movie?
What's that?
Because we in the in an episode never mind.
Oh, sometimes they overlap into movies too. Yeah. Right, exactly. And yeah, if there have been overlaps where a key audio drama comes out, tells some major story events, and then more books keep coming out, including audio books, before that script gets released. And so those people who are not able to listen to the audiobook don't have access to that story, and they fall behind. They can't even read the new stories as they are coming out because they haven't caught up. If they are concerned about reading things in order, which you should try to. It's hard with High Republic, there's so much of it. And I won't get into too much, but that also does come back to cost. There's factors with that, with how much content there is, like you said. And there's another flip side of that too, and I experienced this myself. Besides just people with vision differences who can't read or access print or ebooks, there's usually an audio version of those, but sometimes they will come out later, sometimes they will drop at the same time. But sometimes, like in this case of the Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire book that came out by Chris Kimshaw, there, as I understand it, even messaging him, there are no plans for an audio version of it at all. I bought the book because it's kind of a nice collectible. It's a cool looking book. It's nice. I'll probably skim through it as I can. I have cognitive problems reading books and processing them, like a lot of people. So it's not just a matter of visual differences, but cognitive issues. There's various practical issues with accessing different types of media that people may not think of. And it's frustrating because it means that sounds, from everything I've heard, that's a really great story. And there may be even practical reasons with the structure and format of the story of the medium that it's not adaptable to audio, but I would think it would be. I think there's rare cases in which people don't work out ways to do it. And I'm not sure what the limitation is there, if it's licensing, if it's practical, it's what it is. But yeah, it's unfortunate. And I know, like I said, I know they're working on some of these things. I joked even with Chris Kimshaw that Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire is told as a historical document in universe, as told by, it's as if it's written by, is it Bo? What's his name? The historian character that was introduced in Rise of Skywalker. Bo. Sorry to get off on this, but I thought it was kind of amusing. Beaumont Kin, who is the character played by Dominique Monaghan. So he's a resistance fighter, but he's historically, his lore backstory is that he's a historian. So they actually use that character in this, writing this book after the events of Rise of Skywalker. He writes a history of the Empire, and I just thought, like, can't you make it happen to get Dominic Monaghan to come and read this? Because it would be so perfectly in universe, and appropriate. But he said, yeah, he said, don't wait up, I think was what he told me. So, all right. Moving on from from literary stuff and books and audio to animation. This is one of my favorites of the past year. I'm a big fan of Young Jedi Adventures. I enjoy watching it. My daughter has outgrown the age where she would have loved this 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. But I think it's a great story. I did not skip a slide ahead. And it's just fun, but it's also got like lots of little neat, nice bits of lore. And at some point they introduced this character Aaron in this first season, I think. Aaron Kitt, who is a scavenger, who the young Jedi kids help out, who becomes a friend of theirs, and she has one prosthetic leg that's cybernetic. It feels kind of appropriate for a scavenger, that she's probably built this thing out of parts that she's collected, and that's part of what she does. It's never mentioned. It's just there, which is great. It's just part of her her look and her personality and everything else, her identity. But while it's valuable to explore things like that sometimes in settings, especially like this, you don't need to. And getting that just representation for young audiences is amazing. I can imagine kids with limb differences. What's always great about representation, we always talk about, it's great for the kids who are similar to see themselves doing these things, being normalized. It's also valuable for other kids to see it normalized. It's great for other kids to see representation and to see, oh yeah, so she has a prosthetic leg. That's kind of neat, different. And then it's less strange when they meet someone like that. And that's why it's great in a young medium targeted at young audiences like this, to see somebody like that. And she came back basically a few weeks ago when they released the last part of the second season. She came back for another story. These are all little short stories they do bundled into episodes, dealing with different issues. And she's great. She's a great character. But then also this sort of like extra meta aspect to it that makes her so great is that she's actually voiced by Zyra Gorecki, who is a disabled actress. She has a prosthetic leg. She's previously mostly well known for I'm drawing a blank on the one about the LA. What are the pits in LA? La Brea, the tar pits. There was a show based on that, and she was in that quite a bit and got prominent from that. But she showed up in here, and I didn't see this covered or talked about anywhere. We still want to kind of reach out. We'd love to learn more about how this came about, how she got involved. So you didn't necessarily have to have a disabled character voice a disabled actor voice a disabled character like this, but it's wonderful that they did. She may have some of that nuance of that experience and perspective. Um, and it's sort of like, why not? Why not find the right person to voice that? And she does a great job. Um, we'd love to hear from her and her perspective on her experience in creating this character. I would also say you can actually see in one of these little action shots I got here, her movements and action. Uh, I would say that you can kind of see that it's in the animation how she moves, how she walks. She'll jump on something and kind of wobble a little bit sometimes. I think they kind of worked it in, and I'd be really curious if they used her as reference or if they just kind of studied it or just tried to work some of those things in that they came up with. But it's a really nice to see her involvement and for them to do it that way, especially for kids. Um, the runner-up, this is a broad one we could probably both talk about. I would say we probably don't need to touch on it too much because we have talked about quite a bit elsewhere. Um, Bad Batch I put as a runner-up, almost kind of an honorable mention type thing where we've talked a lot about Bad Batch being very a story of differences and borderline areas of disability and representation in the sense that the clones are genetically different. They have things that some people might perceive as defects. They call them defects and things like that, but that they also have abilities that are make them more effective than normal clones. Um, the whole theme of the first arc of their introduction in Clone Wars was that differences are valuable because they make you whole. And I think that's a super important message. Um, Echo, though, also is a very more explicit bit of representation of disabled limb differences and trauma and just the things he's been through. I think we've really latched onto him as a lot of people latched onto him as representing a lot of disability, um, especially acquired disability. Um, Whereas he was, and being a veteran, being injured in battle, and then being, this doesn't really equate to real life, but basically, being through what he went through to become cybernetically augmented and things like that. Um, Sadly, spoilers for Bad Batch season 2, but Tech was the other one who a lot of people latched onto, especially after some of the season 2 episodes, as being pretty clearly neurodivergent. They really address some ideas with him and Omega about how he processes things differently and emotions differently, portrays them differently. He has a lot of quirks and um, not quirks, but basically traits that people saw as sort of autistically coded, neurodivergent. Um, Sadly, he died season 2. So season 3, which was last year, which would fall into our thing, doesn't really include Tech, but of course he's worth his absence is worth noting during the third season. Um, some people some people were did find that harmful, uh, hurtful that we lost Tech, given how many people had associated with that character for those reasons. And his absence, people really felt a lot more in this third season who had um, connected to him in that way. So that was unfortunate part of the storytelling. Um, not unfortunately not uncommon either. But that's kind of a bigger issue to hopefully be touched on one day, or continue to be improved on. Um, our next category here, before I reveal it, is our most valuable cast story. And part of wanting to address this and talk about it was that we look at all areas of representation and disability in the Star Wars and the creators and the fandom, and um, it's great to hear cast members and crew talk about their own experiences or to have those stories come up or told. Um, the big one last year that came out was a follow-up, may actually have been the beginning of this year, story about Jake Lloyd that was published on Substack by Clayton Sandel, who had previously talked some with Jake's mother and then followed up with an interview with Jake and his mom. And it was just a great update and insight into where Jake is now. Jake played Anakin in Phantom Menace, obviously. he went through a lot. He kind of disappeared from the community, and there were a lot of perceptions about what happened and what he had gone through. This story that came out and was published in Substack was really helpful in understanding what he's been through and where he is now. And a lot of what we learned was that a lot of it had nothing to do with with the fandom and the franchise. Um, that probably didn't it probably impacted it, but essentially, Jake, there was, as we all know, there was such an outpouring of abuse and vitriol and negativity around the prequels at the time. We've seen that in other things. It's continued up to this day. I know you mentioned that too. And he we know that he probably caught some of that. I think he did said he experienced some bullying, things like that. There's criticism of his character, of his acting, all these things that are just abhorrent to anyone, but especially a child. Just terrible things that happened. Remarkably, it sounds like a lot of that didn't actually affect him in the long run as much as everybody assumed that it had, because we knew that he had trouble. There were stories that came out, appearances he made or didn't make. And what has kind of come out is that he actually has schizophrenia and has been diagnosed and has been getting long-term treatment for that, and that it's genetic and really has nothing to do with it's sort of in addition to or aside from his various experiences with Star Wars. And he's been getting treatment. He's been making a lot of progress. Part of this follow-up interview is being able to talk to Jake himself and hear his perspective and some of his story. So it's really cool to see where he is now and to see that he's made progress with treatment. Um, and one of the cool aspects of it that both he and his mom was saying was that he absolutely still loves Star Wars to death. He's still following all the media. He's watching Ahsoka. He was playing these games. He was still into all of it. Um, Hopefully, he'll keep making progress. I would love to see him be able to reach a point that he's able to experience some kind of fan events, if it's not too overwhelming for him, um, to see the love that the other example we use a lot is Ahmed Best, who what he went through. He was an adult when all that happened. He went through it. It may have had more profound experience on him as from what we experience, what we understand of his experiences, and he he's worked through a lot of that stuff. He's come a long way too, and he's gotten out there. He's very active in the franchise again in various roles, which is great. He's involved. He's at fan events. He's at Celebration, and everywhere he goes, he's a great presence. And also, he gets showered with love, just like Hayden, just like a lot of people from the prequels. He's getting showered with love now from the fandom and the community. And I hope Jake can at least be aware of that at some point, um, because I know that would be the case for him too.
I also kind of want to touch with
Mhm.
that is like I do love the Star Wars community because they do eventually come around.
Yeah.
And they do see they do see their past faults, and they definitely show a lot of sincere reconciliation. I just wish that it didn't take everybody so long to come around.
Yeah.
Because while Jake and especially Ahmed and Hayden have been completely won over and beloved by the fans now, and so Kelly Marie Tran, Moses Ingram, and countless others are still suffering from, again, the vitriol. And it's so hard too, because like I said, it's not even, it's personal,
Yes.
which is the real shame of all of
Yes.
this. Like I could like, so for you and I completely disagree on The Last Jedi, 100%. We totally, I know, we tell, but again, but our disagreements are about the story, the characters.
I
Like
like to think.
we can talk,
I like to.
we can have disagreements about the movies
I feel like we
themselves.
have
That's
creative
cool.
disagreements on it.
Yes,
Nothing
yes,
about the
yes.
people involved or the
That's totally
effort or
fine.
the work or the creativity.
Right, right, and that's wonderful. I mean, I
It's healthy.
love getting into discussions with
Mhm.
you or anybody, but when you start getting personal with racism, misogyny, and all these other stupid, horrible things that don't mean anything. It's so frustrating. Like I said, I'm glad everybody comes around, but I just wish there wasn't such a gap between when it happens and when everybody comes back, so to speak, to the light side.
Yeah, I think there's probably
And
some.
we need to grow as a community, and
Absolutely.
we really need to work on that as a Star
We have
Wars
to keep
community.
pushing the positivity and
Right,
denouncing the negativity and the hatred.
right,
Um,
right.
I
And there always is going to be the negativity,
yeah.
but and I think unfortunately it overcomes because there's always going to be trolls. But unfortunately, even some of it, it's not the trolls. I just think we need to learn how to ignore the trolls. But we need to learn how to do better as a community.
We need to address those problems that are.
Yes.
I mean, and it goes beyond our community, obviously. We lost society,
Oh yes,
but
yeah. The
there's an
humanity,
aspect of
but
it that
still,
comes to prominent forebear that especially gets focused on in a number of properties, but I'd say especially Star Wars, probably even more than most.
exactly.
That this
Right.
becomes a focal point and has been a focal point for years.
Right.
And you mentioned some of the sequel people, and I mentioned always the the acolyte cast, so attacked. Again,
Right.
so much overlap with the misogyny, with the hatred, of the racism, um,
Right.
but also a
Bigotry.
lot of things
Mhm.
that yeah, we need to work on it. We're all gonna keep trying to be more positive and keep that stuff going. Am I on the
Right.
wrong slide still?
You
This is the
on best
this is the
animation.
mistake.
You're still on
Yeah,
Bad Batch.
this is the mistake of having two
Hmm.
different slides open. Once I update one, we're showing the other one. I did not advance here to.
Now we're on
Yeah.
Jake.
Okay. So yeah, we've been talking about Jake this whole time and this whole experience and all this stuff. But yeah, it was great to hear more about Jake. This is the photo from the article. This is a current, recent-ish, months ago photo. So just great to see him doing reasonably well for what he's been through and what he's dealing with. I had some. Oh yeah, this is where I. Let me see. Did I finish this? Let me stop sharing this, and then see if it updates, and then reshare it. What does this do over here? Oh, it just takes it off. Okay, cool. Here we go. Apparently, if I'm in slideshow mode and I update the slides, it does not update the slideshow that's currently active. So I just have to close it, reopen it. A few ones to touch on really quickly here. Speaking of someone who got some hate and criticism, who's wonderful but is still active in the to a degree in the community and publicly. Daisy Ridley. Um, I don't know how many people were aware of this or caught at the time. She's talked in the past before she got run out off Instagram the first time. um, she was pretty open about her experiences with various conditions, especially endometriosis, I think. Um, and that had a major effect on her since childhood or since her teenage years. And people really appreciated her being open about that experience, problems with her skin, especially. Um, and that was great to see and hear. She then talked last year during press for other movies about her experience that she had been diagnosed with Graves' disease. Um, I guess a couple years back. I think she may have said that had happened and she got diagnosed during. I feel like it was during filming of Rise of Skywalker or somewhere around that time frame, or maybe during press. Um, and again, having someone so prominent in the franchise, and I mean, she's a star now too, beyond it. It's really helpful and valuable for people to get that, to see that representation of someone. I wouldn't say behind the scenes isn't the word, on camera in the real world, who works with these things and works through them, doesn't overcome them. Um, but yeah, I know Graves is a thyroid autoimmune condition, I think. So it has a number of effects of symptoms that she had with. Uh, I forget what she said. It was her original. She had endometriosis and PCOS. I guess it's PCOS. Um, and yeah, I think she originally did a interview with Women's Health and talked about it, and but has it's come up in other interviews. And so to see her continue to talk on her press tours about that and her experience, how it's affected her work, all that kind of stuff is really great to see her being open about that, given her prominence in media. I am again not sharing this like I thought it was. Where am I? I am not. There we go. Here's our runners up. So moving on from that, this next one obviously is a sad story, but also an important one in the sense that we lost James Earl Jones last year. Of course, really tragic loss, a major loss for the community, for Star Wars, for the world, because of his prominence in so many different things. But he something a lot of people probably didn't know, and especially given his being so well known and regarded for his voice, for his powerful, strong voice that was used as Vader and Foss and all these things, was that he dealt with stutter throughout his life. And he dealt with it a lot as a kid. He had to work with it, learned, I wouldn't say overcome it again. He did sort of, in a sense, overcome in the sense of learning to deal with it. But he even had mentioned, I mean, it was something like a lot of these things, he dealt with it his whole life, even as it became less and less prominent. Another major stutter example is with like Joe Biden, um, who dealt with it. You would still see occasional cases of it later in life, but that he had learned and trained himself to work with it or around it. But a lot of these things don't go away. They don't just get fixed. They don't get cured. You work with them. You learn how to work around them. Um, but that I think that was an important story to share again. It did come out a few years ago when he started talking about it. It's been known, but with his passing, it's a um, sad but an opportunity to bring that up again, to share that aspect of his life experience, literally probably up to the end, that he had dealt with that. Um, and again, especially somebody like him, when his voice was such a prominent thing, and so amazing. Um, this last story is Tate Fletcher, who a lot of people would know as, he's a stuntman, working in Hollywood on a number, I think, on a number of Star Wars properties, but also probably most widely known as the physical role of Paz Vizsla in Mando. And he won a Katie Sackhoff's podcast, which is awesome. Katie gets into a lot of these issues with people in the Star Wars universe and also other media franchises, but talking about their experiences with things like this. But he talks about his traumatic brain injury he experienced um, working as a stuntman for years. I forget if there was a specific case, incident, uh, but I know that he had just experienced it, and he talked a lot about his various symptoms that he dealt with, and kept working as a stuntman with symptoms, again, working with these issues. And he he was very open with her about his experience with that and what it was like, and that was really another valuable thing to hear. I know a lot of people across the board for a number of different reasons have experienced traumatic brain injury, and it's had pretty profound experience impacts on their lives. So this is definitely one of those cases where, like with all these, like I said, it's really what I call the most valuable cast story because these stories being shared have an impact on people. It's not the best, it's not the most notable, it's most, noteworthy, whatever. It's these are the most valuable, I think, in terms of impact on fans. But they're all super valuable. They're all great to have people open up and share their experiences. Um, so really quickly here. I have another slide to add really quickly. So we probably run a little bit longer than I was expecting us to, but this is how you and I are always wordy about all this stuff. We're passionate about it. And I'm glad we're going through it all. Let's see here. Trying to think of anything I want to talk about or cover while I'm working on this. Well, I don't think we had anybody else in chat. If we did, or anywhere else, who anybody might be following, definitely feel free to chime in with any other experiences or thoughts y'all have. Or if you're listening to this after the fact, please feel free to reach out with any other stories, like we said, of things you heard about or aware of that are worth sharing and talking about. Meanwhile, I'm dealing again with too many tabs. Oh, here we go. Okay. I'll go and start talking about this one. Our slide will come up in a second. The next one here we felt kind of strongly about at the time. And I was careful the wording with this too. We have our most disappointing cast story. And this came about. You probably talked to this one as much as me, Jack.
Yeah. Sorry, I have an elder dog, and she's having
yeah.
issues. That's why I keep
Uh,
stepping away. So I do apologize. But yes,
oh, no, you don't need to.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why
Go
I'm
ahead.
kind of distracted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of stories here we want to share. The winner here is the most prominent case. But yeah, you can go ahead. What?
Yeah. So like obviously the X-Men. We all know the X-Men are coming to the MCU, and of course there's always rumors and like cast rumors, whatever. So one of the big cast rumors was Giancarlo Esposito. Everybody wants him to play Xavier, which is, I think, that's a pretty awesome idea. I think he would do great.
I could see it.
And even with just him being a person of color too, I mean, he has a couple of different aspects of what he could bring a lot more what the X-Men are all about. Anyway, somebody asked him directly, I guess, hey, there's all these rumors about you playing Charles Xavier. What do you think about that? And I'm paraphrasing. Or Greg, do you have the actual quotes?
I would have. Yeah, actually, I do.
Okay. So basically, he said that he would like it, but like the whole idea of being in a wheelchair all day was like
it did not appeal to him.
It didn't appeal to him. He I know what he was trying to say, and Greg, let's say you'll get the exact quote, but like the way he said it was just so ableist and just so ridiculous. Acting like
it was very dismissive.
He was basically and the way he said it, it sounded like he was equating being disabled to being a nuisance.
Yeah.
And it would
He-
just,
he-
and
I
it
have
was
the
coming
quote.
from him, somebody Greg and I both love, and being such a prominent actor and such a huge voice in the
Yeah.
movies, and it's like,
And
if we're just some little, who D-lister, who cares? But it's Giancarlo Esposito. See, here's somebody like that saying
we
something like
really
that,
like
even
him.
though,
Yeah.
yeah, even though he doesn't. Of course, we don't know what he meant by it. I
Yeah. Well,
I would like to think, and I would hope to think that he didn't mean anything disrespectful by it, but
right.
he definitely should have chosen his words more
He
carefully.
should have
And
chose
I
his
know,
words.
like, when
And I
somebody
would hope
throws
he
that
would
question,
hear and
you got
learn.
you have to think, like, that's a live question, and you have to come with it. So as I get it, but at the same
Yeah.
time, you definitely need to be a little more thoughtful about how you word things.
Yeah. 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 Really quick, here's the actual quote. And he was on an interview with a podcast. They asked him about it. He said,
Oh,
"Oh
good.
yeah, I."
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, I would definitely was really interested." And he goes, "Oh, that'd be amazing." He's really excited about the prospect. But he says, uh, immediately I go, "It would be great to play Professor X in some other incarnation than just the wheelchair, right?" Which, first of all, we have had that in live action because yes, he did go through times of, for various
Right.
reasons, not using the
Yeah, in
wheelchair.
the
But
movie.
yeah. But he said, because the physical idea of being in a wheelchair every single day does not appeal to me. I just don't feel that old and don't like to sit that much. But we can figure
And
something out. Professor X wasn't always in the wheelchair.
right.
uh,
But that's another thing too. Now he's equating
yeah,
being a wheelchair user to
old,
being a
sitting
senior.
all day.
And
Yeah,
yes, I will be a senior, and
one day.
we will both be seniors in about a decade. But still, I mean, I was born disabled. Great.
Right.
I mean, so it's like, no, not all wheelchair users are senior citizens.
Yeah.
There are children, there are minors, there are people of all ages, all abilities, all everything. That again, yeah, it's so annoying to hear him say, "Oh well, yeah, that's an old person thing,"
Right. And that he
among all the other stuff,
does,
all the
and he
other
just doesn't want to be sitting all day. I mean,
right.
and yeah, there's several parts of it too that were like,
I don't want to
like you
be
said,
either, but I mean, I don't have a
I mean,
choice. And
I
that's
think
the other thing too. Like I know he didn't like mean it like that. It's like, but like again, that's the problem with at the yes, I understand, like, shooting days during movies are very, very long, very tiresome, very exhausting. I get that.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, he still gets to walk to his car, drive home, walk into his home. So while
yeah,
yes, he will have a very exhausting day, us wheelchair users, we don't have that luxury.
yeah, and it's also there's like, and inherently there's just nothing wrong with using a wheelchair. It's an accessibility, it's a mobility aid. It doesn't reflect on you. It wouldn't reflect on him to
Right.
use one. And I mean the fact that I mean, come back to what you said too about him. Part while we're featuring the story, it's yeah, he's talking about the X-Men. We're talking about Professor X. It's a different franchise, different representation, but he is a prominent Star Wars star, and we like him a lot. We've loved him in Mandalorian. He was great. We love to see him. We hope for better, I think is part of it. We expect better. And when things like this happen, and part of why we want to raise the awareness and bring up the issue, and other fans too said there was a lot of disappointment and outrage from the community, from disabled community and fans, was we hope they stars like him can hear those stories or be made aware of them and learn from them. Um, and I think he probably could learn from this if he became aware of it, if he hasn't already. Um, but yeah, it's part of why we talk about these things, part of why we advocates make them are vocal about it, because hopefully it gives some of these people an opportunity to see that other perspective and learn from it and realize not only see it a different way, but also realize to an extent what the harm that they're doing. Um, I hope that that can be the case for him. I I hope an end version of this story is that he learns from it and says, you know what, that actually I get it now. And because also, like we said, I mean, yes, there are cases where Professor X does not have to use a wheelchair. He didn't always in the comics. He hasn't always in the movies. Uh, but it is kind of tied closely, largely associated with his character and his appearance and his experiences. And by dismissing that for these reasons, not only just doesn't sound accurate to the character, like he really knows the character, but also like it's very dismissive of the character and the character's experiences and what the things that make up his identity. Um, like I was gonna say, I think a great scenario version of this would be he hears these things, he learns from them, he accepts it and learn and adapts his understanding, and maybe he ends up playing Professor X in a wheelchair once he understands better and says, "Yeah, okay, I get it. It's not that big a deal, and I can play him that way, and it would be great to play him that way." Um, so maybe that happens. Maybe we get there. Until then, I don't want to see him playing Professor X anymore. I have one more I'm sharing on this note. 1 second while I update this. Too many tabs. This one came up. I would say it's not as egregious, but it is a good learning opportunity. Let's see if I can, again, update the slide. If I replace the screen sharing with the same one, will it have the next slide? Nope. I'll just close and reopen it. Learned this platform does not update well, actually, maybe more of a Google Slides issue, but
And just go FYI, I'm not sure if you realize, or do you maybe do, that there are no slides on the feed yet.
Yeah, I'm basically working on it. Yeah,
I assume, but I just want to.
Exactly. Yep. Where is it? There we go. Okay. Our other runner-up for most disappointing cast story. Again, disappointing. We're not mad. We'd like it to be a learning opportunity and see progress and improvement. But there was a case with Charlie Barnett. And again, I wouldn't totally put this on him either. It's kind of it's definitely a more cultural thing. But an interviewer asked him during a cast interview for Acolyte about the character of Yord and said, he's kind of got a bit of OCD, doesn't he? And I mean, first of all, it's the reporter who brought that up and made that connection. And Charlie said, yeah, definitely. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that makes total sense. He's definitely OCD. And some of the other cast agreed as well. A lot of OCD fans were pretty outspoken about the fact about how incorrect that was. Again, it's not malicious. It's probably just much more ignorant, especially something like OCD there's a lot of ignorance around it, a lot of misunderstanding and misrepresentation, stereotypes in Hollywood, elsewhere. But basically, that's not the characteristics of the character Yord, that he is just very meticulous. He's very, focused on things, very cleanly, things like that. those are not OCD. So everything they described that they were describing in this interview of like, oh, he's like this and like this and like that, it's like OCD. And that is a common misunderstanding about OCD and what it is. A lot of people point out and share their own experiences with OCD. Um, the intrusive thoughts, the repetitive, actions that OCD as a disorder is much more because everybody has, again, like with a lot of these things, a lot of people have obsessive behaviors. We have compulsions. That's normal. Some of them more are stronger than others. When you have a real disorder like OCD, it means that a disorder by nature, by definition, interrupts your life. Um, it would be fascinating to see something like an OCD Jedi, a Jedi with OCD, if it was actually portrayed accurately and um, an aspect of their person. But in this case, it was not. That's not what Yord is, as from what we've seen of him, what we saw of him.
It's
uh,
in a roundabout way, because I get this all the time. Is
yeah,
when someone comes up to me and is like, you know what? I was in a wheelchair for 2 weeks. I know exactly how you feel.
right. No, you
It's like
don't.
I've been in a wheelchair for 49 years.
Right.
I mean, and I I get that they're trying to relate in. I guess it's just like people, like I said, they don't know. Again, like with anything, like anything that we're saying, anything we ever say, we're not picking on anybody because we know, like, if you're not in our situation, you don't know. Just
Yeah.
like again, we know our disabilities, but we don't know like it's like to be blind. We don't know like it's be hearing impaired. So like, I don't, I don't mind when somebody doesn't know. That's totally fine. But hopefully, when somebody does misspeak on something,
Yeah.
like you just said with Giancarlo, hopefully with Charlie, they can learn and
Yeah.
say, "Oh, you know
Exactly.
what? Hey, yeah, I get it. I misspoke, and I'll try and do better."
Yep.
'Cause
I think
know that none of us know everything about everything. We're always learning.
you and I don't. We point that out
Right.
all the
Well,
time. We
yeah.
do this because we're passionate about it. But one of our main goals is to share other people's stories and perspectives, especially
Mhm.
about things we don't know about. I mean, this project of Resilient Squadron for the past 5 years or so has been, I think for me, I would say probably, I would assume for you, is mostly been a learning opportunity for us.
Right.
Uh, and the things we're talking about, all these things we've talked about throughout these examples are all things we've learned more about over the last few years.
Mhm.
And that's part of why we share and repeat these stories and share other people's perspectives. We don't know much about OCD. And I know, what people have said about the misunderstandings about it, but it was great to hear disabled fans speak up and share their experiences. And again, yeah, like I named this the most disappointing cast story. I'm not mad about it, but we'd love them to learn and do better. Um, and that's why we're glad people share their stories and why we do this. And oh, I was going to say also, and also going back to all these other examples, that's why the representation is so important. Accurate, inclusive representation is so important, and why I mentioned some cast. We haven't really had a space here to conclude. I think probably in the future we're going to include. In the future, we'll make this a bit more concise, but also, but also at the same time, probably hit more uh, categories. A lot of creators behind the scenes, especially in the books and the literary stuff. There's a lot of representation behind the scenes of writers and people who have different various experiences that they infuse into their stories. Um, if a person with OCD was working with any of them, well, it's not a good example in terms of the interview, but in terms of some of the more negative stereotypes and tropes, when there's a disabled person on the team, and when there's accommodation or accessibility issues, people being involved, telling their stories or being involved in these stories, catch those things. Um, having people with disabilities or advocates reviewing or uh, doing content reviews for things helps a lot to catch those things and clarify and point them out. But that is also why this representation and accurate representation is so important, is because that's how we become aware of these things and understand them better. Um, so, like with some of those earlier examples of representation in various media, um, like I said, with the Young Jedi Adventure, seeing it at such a young age, the earlier the better that we get representation. Kids
Right.
start to learn from a very young age. I mean, if there was an OCD character in Young Jedi Adventures, great, because then they can actually see. We've seen some autistic representation in stories. I think there was like in Bluey. There's other uh, cartoons and series and animated series for younger adults, young kids who get to see those things. It's so valuable for them to learn early on, and then we don't have these kind of stories later.
Right.
It's self-perpetuating in terms of better representation, better stories being told.
And also too,
Um,
even with Book of Boba Fett, we got Troy. Not only did Troy act in the on the show, but he actually, helped with the hearing impairment.
yep,
And so we got an accurate depiction of
yep,
hearing
exactly,
impairment.
yep.
And then
So
even further, he actually created the Tusken Raider language.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, yeah, Troy Kotzer, who won the Oscar best supporting actor Oscar for Coda previously, and actually afterwards, worked on developing the Tusken Sign Language in Mando, and he worked on Book of Boba Fett, but also performed as a Tusken. He was one of the main prominent ones who was doing the signing. But doing signing in that series. So we have been on for a while, and we need to wrap up for various reasons. We're never as concise as I hope we will be, but there's so much to talk about and so much to cover, and I think this will give us a lot of content to put out in various formats that are more concise. um, I want to touch on this last one, but I actually am realizing it's unfortunate that this is the one I would actually like to talk the most about. Give me 1 second here. Which is our best live action representation story. And I would actually, yeah.
And just
I'll
saying,
actually,
if you have the time, I have time. So
I am actually being called to dinner, so I do need to
okay,
wrap up. It's
right,
also school night.
right,
but
right, right.
but also, I mean, this will be longer than we want for like audio, but I think we can trim it down to maybe even multiple episodes or something, in other formats. Let me reshare this real quick. Let's see if we can touch on this one as promptly as we can, because it is worth it. And if you don't already know what it is, you'll know what I mean. Honestly, we should talk about this briefly. Maybe we should do a follow-up, because we talked about doing it anyway, where we can actually dive into this one. But our live action representation of the year and favorite thing of the year was KB's story in Skeleton Crew. I'll actually say this is one where I know that you and I both feel like there's so much going on this year that when this story came out, it was very important. It's a very important story, a massive representation in Star Wars. It's kind of everything I've been wanting to see in Star Wars as far as disability representation, how it was told, the nature of it, how it was worked into the story, how this is a story about kids and how these things affect kids and their relationships. I like, even at the time when it happened, uh, yeah, we wanted to talk about it more, and we just never were able to line up and make it happen. But yeah, this was a big thing. In fact, let me do this really quick. Let me again see if I can just. Yeah. So she's our live action representation story of the year, but I would also call her a disability story of the year. So I mean, the quick context, and we can talk about how much we want to get into it, but try to wrap up too. You know, episode 6. I would like to tell a bit of this backstory too, of the context for us, because I think it matters. But you and I went to our first con together back in December, as Skeleton Crew was releasing. I think literally it was the same week. We went to Steel City Con up there near you in Pittsburgh. And among other people, we got to meet Bryce Dallas Howard. And we knew that she was directing one or more of the episodes of Skeleton Crew. But you and I went in our costumes, in our adapted disability-oriented costumes. We're handing out cards. We're trying to raise some awareness and talk about these things. And we met Bryce, and she was amazing and wonderful. She loved what we were doing. And she also threw out, as we were close to wrapping up, she's like, guys, watch Skeleton Crew. And I accept, she was probably saying that to everybody. Hey, guys, watch Skeleton Crew. It's out now. I did an episode. I feel like it's my headcanon, at least. And she was like, these guys are going to love what I did on Skeleton Crew. You guys need to watch it.
I think it was both.
Might have been a bit. I'm sure she was also promoting too. Just wanting to talk about it.
Hey guys, look what I do. Look what I did. Like it was more, hey guys, pay attention to this because this is in it. Not that this is what I did.
That's what I meant. Yeah, it was more. Hey, you're going to really appreciate Skeleton Crew. You should watch. You should be watching it.
She wasn't exactly tooting in her own horn. She may have been a little bit. But
right. Definitely didn't mean to sound that way. But yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think there was. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think there was very well could have been everybody that she met and took pictures with was saying, watch Skeleton Crew. I felt like it was a bit personal of saying, you guys would really appreciate Skeleton Crew. You should be watching it, which I'm sure she assumed we were anyway. But I felt like that was a little personal thing of wanting to, like, you guys are going to appreciate it. And then end of the month, we got this episode of Skeleton Crew. And it was episode 6. What was that title again? I had it ingrained in my memory.
I don't remember at all.
It was Zero Friends Again, which just
right.
Yeah, I think to do this justice, I think let's do a follow-up and record again with more. And I want to mention it here on this as far as this award, and let's follow up and do it like a dedicated our disability story of the year. And the funny thing too, I mean, we're covering all of 2024 and then through this weekend of May 4th. There's a couple other stories we didn't have time to fit in here. This one did go right in under the wire of releasing on December 31st, New Year's. So it was like the key capping off of 2024. But yeah, the short version of KB, for anyone who didn't watch Skeleton Crew, but even those who saw it, maybe didn't pick up these themes, KB has a disability. She has physiological issues as a result of an accident when she was younger, she says. She has augments that help her in a number of ways that we don't fully understand, but they actually keep her functioning. I think there was a perception. When we first saw this character, I saw the visor. I was like, I want to know more about that visor. What does that do for her? Why does she use it? Is it just a tool? Does she like it? Or is she more Geordie LaForge? Is she something else? I think what we learned was she was something else, even more these tools don't just provide abilities for her, but also keep her functioning. And as the story progresses, and as she mentions it more and more, as they get into more difficult environments and situations, we find out, and eventually they become a complete a problem as her augments shut down and are malfunctioning. It affects her abilities, and eventually risks her life. Um, and it was kind of also great from a story standpoint to see that all that happened, to see what it is like to live with disability and with tools. We talked earlier about wheelchairs. You can't almost physically separate somebody from the wheelchair if they are completely dependent on it. It's almost like, I think people use the analogy. It's basically like your legs. Like somebody's going to take your legs. What are you going to do? And seeing all that in her perspective on it and what she shared and her story that she shares with Wim and
Well,
everyone
also
else.
too, I mean, without getting in too much detail too, again,
Mhm.
Fern's perspective.
Yes, exactly. I was going
Because
to touch on
again,
that.
like, so you imagine, so we get the disabled friend, but we also get the perspective of an abled friend.
Yeah.
And I have a little more I want to speak about on that, but obviously we'll save that for the
Mhm.
next.
Yeah. The gist of that I'm agreeing with, basically, that we can explore later, is
Right.
it affects her relationships.
Yes, that's why
Her
the title of the movie, the title of the episode.
it's her fear. It's her biggest fear. She lost her friends through her experiences. She gained Fern, developed a friendship with her, and has been afraid of losing her again. And it has affected her, how she stands up for herself, how she perceives relationships, how she perceives her abilities, and what she's willing to do. And that develops in the course of the story. And it's a great learning opportunity experience for her and for anybody watching. I value this story because of the fact that uh, my daughter's autistic, and she doesn't always watch the live action stuff, and basically, unless it includes Grogu. She appreciates it all, but doesn't always watch it all. And my wife and I really want to watch this episode when she was awake one night. Actually, she was staying up for New Year's. That's right. She was staying up for New Year's, and we wanted to watch this episode. She's like, "Okay, fine, put it on. Well, I'll watch it with you." She has a lot of anxiety watching live action stuff and dramatic things, but she was intrigued by Skeleton Crew. She just didn't really want to watch it. She decided to watch this one with us, and I did not know this was going to be the story. And it meant a lot to see this story be told and be the one episode that she watched with us. And so, uh, yeah, to see how it affected the group, the friendship, the the crew, and KB, and even kind of KB's bit of growth too in that story, was really meaningful and awesome. Yep. Cool. I think that's pretty much it. That covers everything. We had a number of other categories. We'd even talked about some things, went back and forth with a few other things we wanted to include. I'll throw out the dishonorable mention of I had said the worst accessibility story was Disney's DAS policy.
Yeah.
We've
If you want
talked
to know a
about it.
little more about that, go back to our old episode.
We did an episode last summer. We had an episode June or I think July. We did a whole episode on it. Please check that out. I will call that. That's, like I said, we don't want to call individuals out as far as, hey, this person, we don't like them because of this reason, that reason, or some of the negative stuff. It's all growth. It's all learning. We want to share knowledge and educate. In the case of the Disney DAS policy, that is Disney making corporation making financial decisions that affect
Right.
definitely negatively impact disabled
Right.
visitors, and I'll call them out.
Yeah,
They've screwed that
100%.
up, and they need to fix it. Still, they've adjusted things here and there. It's not gotten much better.
But even then, we're calling them out because we want them to do better.
Exactly.
We want to enjoy it.
Yep.
So we're not
Exactly.
like, oh, F Disney, we're never going there again. We're not doing blah blah blah. We want them to do better, even though their motives are
Yep.
beyond ignorance.
Yep.
We're
Exactly.
still coming from a place of wanting to improve things.
Yep. Hope. Yep.
We're not just saying, oh, screw them. No.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Disability this is my new phrase. Disability justice is built on hope. Hope that people can do better, they can learn, that we can spread awareness just like everyone else who does this kind of stuff, and people can learn from it. And hopefully Disney can too.
Right.
All right, man. Well, thanks everybody for joining us.
Appreciate
if anyone
it.
has actually stuck on and stuck with us, if you're listening to this later, we appreciate you joining us and checking us out. And also, we're on you find us all over at resilientsquadron.com. Find us on our Resilient Squadron Discord, which is linked. All of our social media are all linked on our website. So that's probably the easiest way to find everything else. But we're on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. We're on Facebook too, for what that's worth. Well, we got good interaction with this one Facebook, which is rare. Algorithms are not always our friend with a lot of just like a lot of other people. But we appreciate also if you want to join, want to share our stories, share this with other people, let them know about this, especially if you think they'll be interested or could use hearing some of these discussions. Also, please share your stories with us, especially come in our Discord. Let us know your own story and or other stories you've heard about. We are going to be using it. So we just set it up. We're going to be using it to do a lot more work on collecting stories and sharing stories with other people in that community that will eventually push out in other various forms of content as often as we can. So really appreciate it. All right. Cool. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
And what was I forgot. I had come up with a catchphrase for wrapping up episodes. I forget what it was. Anyway, take care. Force be with you. May the 4th be with you. There you go. You got it. Misrepresentation, man. All right. Bye.